All right, today what we're going to talk about, or we're going to review a lot of things and do a couple more things in there, but it's slope, midpoint, distance, and Pythagorean theorem. So quick slope review. So remember, slope is y sub 2 minus y sub 1, and then, oops, I forgot to put the minus sign in there, and then x sub 2 minus x sub 1. You've also heard it said as rise over run, or delta y, which is change of y over change of x. So what we're going to do here is I've already done the graph for you where I plotted all these points and then I connected them. And what I'm going to do is determine the slope of each side. So I went through, and then for PS, so to get from here to here, I found the slope. So when we did the slope, I went down 2 to the right 3, and then that's as simplified as you can get. Now for QR, right here, I'm going to go, I could use the formula, which is what I put here, or I could go up 2 and to the left 3, which gives me the same slope as here. So if it's the same slope, then we know these must be parallel lines. All right, and then for RS, again, you can use the formula for those 2 points, or you can go, and it doesn't matter which way you go, I can go down 7 and to the left 4. So, oops, sorry, down 6, sorry. Down 6 and to the left 4. And when I did that, I'm going to get negative 6 over negative 4, which gives you positive 3/2. And then same thing here, I'm going to connect those 2 points, and then I went up 6, and I went to the right 4, or you could do the slope formula, and I got the same thing as 3/2. So since these two have the same, these are also parallel lines, which that's what I drew my little arrows here to show those two parallel to each other, and these two are parallel to each other. All right, so now we're going to do the same thing, and we want to determine the slope. So once we figured out our slope over 4, so this one, CB, is 3/4. Now I want you to look at CB, and I want you to look at AC. So for AC, which again, we're going to go down 4 to the right 3. If you notice, I've got 3/4 here, but I have negative 4/3 here. So when you flip it and you change the sign, those are perpendicular lines, meaning slopes are opposite reciprocals. So the opposite means you change signs. And reciprocals is where you flip the fraction. So change signs. So if you notice, that's exactly what we did. This was a positive, we made it negative, and then we switched the order to put it as 4/3. So those two are perpendicular, which means it would make a right angle. All right, and then for AB, plug those points in, or you would go down 7 to the left 1, which will give you positive 7 over positive 1, which is 7. All right, now midpoint, this is a new topic for you. So midpoint is just finding the point halfway between the end points of the segment. So if you're looking at this line, we want to figure out, it's diagonal, so we can't figure it out just by looking at it. But what we can do is we can take our x values and count those. So we have 8. And then we're going to take our y values, which are 6, and then you just divide it by 2. So if I go through and I take this 8 divided by 2, I get 4. And if I take my y's, which is 6 divided by 2, I get 3. So if you notice, I'm going to go in 4 units which would be right here. So that's the halfway point there. And then I'm going to go down, and then I'm going to go 3 units here, and then go across, and they both meet up right here. So that's one way to do it. Or you could go ahead and plug in this point, and that's going in your x's, and then plug in these 2 points, and they're both going to your y's, and then divide by 2. So that's it. So you're just finding either the units that are halfway and then figuring out what to do here. So as you notice, up 3, and then I went over 4, and that's where we landed. Was right here, which is 3, 1. All right, so same thing here. We're going to take how many units there are. So I know there's 4, so I'm going to just go up 2, because that's 4 divided by 2, which is 2. And then I've got 8 divided by 2, which is 4. And then I'm just going to go over 4. So that's all we did. And so the point that's halfway between is -1/4. Or you could take your x's, add them together, and then divide by 2. And then you could take your y's, add them together, and divide by 2. And either way, that's going to give you your new ordered pair. All right, so you're going to go ahead and do the same thing here. Endpoints. So now we're going to work we're going to figure out where it would be to find the midpoint if it gives us the ends. So A is 5, 1. So I'm taking my x's, adding them together, and then divide by 2, and I'm going to get 4. Then I'm taking my y's, add them together, and you're going to get, and divide it by 2, you're going to get 6. And now 4 over 2 is 2, and 6 over 2 is 3. So that's your new ordered pair. So I want you to go ahead, I want you to try this. If you did it correctly, that should be your answer. And then I want you to go ahead and try it on the graph. So, and if you did it correctly, your midpoint should be -1, 3. But remember to count, make your right triangle, and just do halfway through theirs. Okay, now number 4 I'm going to do, because it's just how it's worded, it's a little different, but it's still the same process. Because we've got these points are the endpoints, and we want to know what's the center of the circle. So the diameter is the full length of the circle. So that's the diameter. So we want to know what the center is. So that's a fancy way of saying what is the midpoint. Oops. Midpoint. Okay. All right. So same exact thing we just did. Take our x's, we add them together, and then divide by 2 to get 20 over 2, which gives us 10. Then we take our y's, add them together to get -5, divide by 2, and then that gives us -2.5. So pretty easy. It's just remembering to, since it's halfway, you divide by 2. All right, so now this one is you're kind of working backwards because it's giving you one endpoint and one midpoint, so we need to figure out what's that point. So really, if it's the midpoint, you know, however you move one direction, you got to move the same amount the other direction. So in this case, I went up 4, and I've got 3 here. So if this is our midpoint, I'm just going to do the same thing and go up 4 over 3. So if I go up 4, oops, let me take 5/8 here. So if I were to go, since I went right 3 and I went up 4, then that's going to give you 8, 12. And so that's what Q would be. All right, so that's all we're doing is just continuing the pattern. Now this one is a different way of thinking about it. I showed you a couple different ways. You pick whichever way you like. So here's one way to think about it. If we've got the endpoints, M is the midpoint, which is 1, 2, of DF, and F has the coordinates of, oops, did I forget my negative? -5, -3. There you go. Let me make sure I put that on the right. I think I did not write the negative in here. So let me just double check because that's going to throw everything else off. Okay, it looks like I just wrote it wrong. Okay, so there we go. Yeah, okay, I wrote it. I did it correctly. I just forgot to put it in. Okay, so let's go ahead, back it up. All right, so now I've got this written correctly. So let's look at our x's. To get from here to here, I had to add 5. So to continue the pattern, I have to add 5 to get from here to here. So 2 plus 5 gives us 7. And we're going to do the same thing with our x's. To get from here to here, I had to add 6. And to get from here to here, I also have to add 6. So 1 plus 6 equals 7. So that gives you the ordered pair of 7, 7. All right. And then now, this is another way to look at it. I'm working backwards. If our formula is x1 plus x2 divided by 2, I said x1 is here, x2 is here, add them together. So now I'm going to multiply both sides by 2. That's going to cancel that out. I'm left with negative 5 plus x equals 2. Now let's add 5 to both sides and I get x equals 7. So that's one way to do it for here instead of shifting at 6 to find the difference, but we still get the same thing. And then here I've got y1, y2, add them together. And so, but I can't do that because I have a variable, so I have to multiply both sides by 2 to get rid of that denominator. And I've got negative 3 plus y equals 4. And then now let's add 3 to both sides and I get y equals 7, which is the same thing. So either way, whichever way works best for you, you can visualize it here by shifting everything. And then whatever you do here, make sure you do the same thing here. Or you can set up as an equation. So go ahead, try number 7. If you do this correctly, you should get 17, negative 11 as your answer. All right, now Pythagorean theorem. Pythagorean theorem is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So remember, a and b make the right angles. C is across from the right angle. So the legs make the right angle and your hypotenuse is across from the right angle. So all you do is just write the formula, plug in what you know, solve for what you don't. So I know A is one of the legs, and since 13 is your hypotenuse, this goes with C. C has to be your hypotenuse. And then now you're going to subtract 12 squared is 144. Subtract 144 from both sides. Okay, now I'm going to get x squared equals 25. Well, remember, to get rid of that squared, we have to take the square root of both sides. And now that cancels out, and I'm left with x equals 5. Now, we would normally put plus or minus 5, but since it's dealing with the length of the triangle, minus 5 would not make sense. All right, so then here, this is a leg, this is a leg because they make the right angle. So you can think of this as A, this is B. This is your hypotenuse, which has to be C. So then again, just plug in, and then we're going to solve for our hypotenuse. So in this case, add those two together to get 25 equals x squared. But to cancel out that squared, we have to take the square root of both sides. And again, we're going to get x equals 5. And remember, for your hypotenuse should be the longest of the lengths for your triangle. All right, I want you to go ahead and try those. And this one, we'll just say this one is x right there, okay? All right, now distance formula. This one you've talked about before, but as a refresher, there's two ways to do different distance formula. One way is we're going to use this nice big long formula and plug in the difference of your y's and square it, and then take the difference of your x's and square it, and then take the square root of the whole thing. So that's a pretty big, long, complicated formula. So I'm going to show you a slightly different way that's probably easier for you. Is you're basically going to use slope, but we're not going to make a fraction. You're going to use the length of each part as your leg. So if you look here, if I were to go 2, just like we make our right triangle, that's one of the legs. And then we're going to do our run, which is going to be the length of the other leg, but we're not finding a fraction. But we are going to put it into a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So really, if you think about it, you're finding slope, but instead of making a fraction, you're using those lengths to square and equal the hypotenuse. If you choose to do the distance formula, all you're doing is this is just like slope, where you're finding the difference between the two, but this time you're squaring it. All right, so I want you to go ahead and try that one. And if you did this one correctly, I forgot to write it in, but you should have x equals 8.06 units. All right, so again, we're going to practice some more. This is a longer set of notes, but I do want you to find the distance between those 2 points. So I plotted the points, I connected them. Now, this is your leg, square it. Find the hypotenuse. Go ahead, I want you to try this one. And if you do this one correctly, you should get x equals 7. And then for number 5, if you do this correctly, you should get 11.7. Same thing, plot your points and then find the distance. And then this is similar to what we kind of did before, where we've got these points create a diameter of a circle. So we want to find the length of the radius. Well, one radius is half the diameter. So first we got to find out, okay, this is 4 and square it. This is 8 and square it. And we're looking for this. So really our circle is like here. Whoops, that's a horrible circle. Slightly better. It's supposed to be like that. All right, so anyways, go ahead, plug it in, take the square root of both sides, and you'll get 8.94 equals x, but that's not what we're asking for. This would be the diameter. We want the radius. So since we want the radius, we're going to take our diameter and we're going to multiply it by 1/2 to get 4.47. All right, that was a lot of information, but this is slope, midpoint, distance, and Pythagorean theorem.